I recorded a video back in September about the CDC's order banning evictions. Well, a U.S. district judge in Texas agreed that the CDC's order is unconstitutional. So let's ponder the judge's opinion next on the Constitution Study.
One thing you have to know wherever you make your stand came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study, where we read and study the Constitution. We teach the rising generation to be free, and I am glad you could join me. I'm going to point you to the website, as I always do, constitutionstudy.com, because there's a lot of good information there. Mostly what you have is access to the articles and the videos that I produce each and every week for you. So you can learn, so you can ponder, so you can debate and discuss what's going on in our world from a constitutional standpoint. And best of all, not only do you get all that information for free, you can share it for free. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to challenge you to share, each and every one of you, share this with friends and family, because it is important information and it will help you get a point across, or it may help you open a discussion. And I think that's really what we need in America right now, is a bit more open discussion and a bit less closed-minded, shut people up who don't agree with us. So if you can do that, that would be great. Hey, if you can support the work that I'm doing here, that would be wonderful as well. You can do so, again, at the website, constitutionstudy.com. Today, I want to talk about this lawsuit, and I want to ponder what it means that this federal judge has found it unconstitutional. Now, this case comes from the Eastern District of Texas, and I found it through one of my news feeds, and I've read through most of the opinion and the order that the judge has given. Now, the judge puts it quite succinctly in his opening paragraph, quote, "This lawsuit presents the question whether the federal government has authority to order property owners not to evict specified tenants. Plaintiffs argue that this authority is not among the limited powers granted to the federal government in Article 1 of the Constitution, and thus the decision whether to enact an eviction moratorium rests with a given state. Disagreeing, the federal government argues that a nationwide eviction moratorium is within Article 1's grant of federal authority to regulate commerce among the states." So let's dive into this a little bit. Now, if you want more detail on what I wrote about the order, I'll put the link in the description so you can follow up from there. I want to focus strictly on what is happening in this lawsuit. So the question is, does the federal government have the authority to order private property owners not to evict specified tenants? Now, the plaintiffs, those who are suing to get this order overturned, they argue that it's not among the powers delegated to the federal government. Now, they point to Article 1. I would say there's nowhere in the Constitution is this power delegated to the federal government. And therefore, according to the 10th Amendment, it would generally remain with the states. The power is not delegated to the United States by this Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, remain with the states or the people. Now, I say generally because I make a point that depriving someone of their property, namely the building or apartment that is for rent, without due process is prohibited to the states by both the 5th and 14th Amendments of the Constitution. But that's not here or there. This is the argument being made. Article 1 does not support this. Now, the federal government, surprise, surprise, well, they disagree. They say, no, this falls within the Commerce Clause. We'll talk about that in more detail a little bit farther down in this discussion. Again, quoting from the opinion, quote, "Only that issue is posed here. This lawsuit does not question that a state may regulate residential evictions and foreclosures as they have long done." Now, again, this gets into the question of how far you can regulate, and can you actually deprive someone of their property without due process of law. And again, find the other article if you want more details about that. But continuing on, quote, "The question here is whether a nationwide moratorium on evicting specified tenants is within the limited powers that our Constitution grants to the federal government, namely, its authority to legislate as necessary and proper to regulate commerce among the several states." Now, this is quite a common canard. It's this idea that the Commerce Clause says the federal government can regulate commerce, period. If it exists within the states, they can regulate it. Well, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 is the Commerce Clause, and it reads, quote, "To regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes." So Congress has the authority to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states. Now, there's two really important things to notice. First, the most common misunderstanding of the Commerce Clause. Congress does not have the authority to regulate commerce. It has the authority to regulate commerce among the several states. That's why it's commonly referred to as interstate commerce. So commerce between the states, and this was created for a very simple reason. If you live in New York, you didn't want to have to pay a tax to sell your material in New Jersey. You didn't want to have that disadvantage. We didn't want imposts and excises and duties among the states. We wanted things to be even. So Congress was given the authority to regulate commerce among the states. Well, here's the problem. If you are renting an apartment, a house, a building, that is not commerce among the states. That is commerce within a state. In other words, it is not interstate commerce. It is intrastate commerce. And Congress is not given the authority to regulate intrastate commerce. Now, there's commerce that exists within the states. Now, the courts have ignored this, but that, again, is a discussion for another day. But there's another very important point here. Article 1 deals specifically with Congress. Congress has the authority to regulate commerce among the several states, not the executive branch. And the CDC is part of the executive branch. It is a government agency. It was created by Congress, but Congress, not only did Congress not delegate the authority to the CDC to issue rules about renting and evictions, Congress doesn't have the authority to delegate any of its power to anyone. So this whole thing is basically it's a big mess. But let's go on. But here, after analyzing relevant precedents, the court concludes that the federal government's Article 1 power to regulate interstate commerce and enact laws necessary and proper to that end does not include the power to impose the challenged eviction moratorium. Okay, so the judge here analyzed precedent. Did they analyze the Constitution? Notice, the focus is on precedent, what other judges have said, not what the Constitution actually says. Now, the judge comes to the correct conclusion, but not the correct way, because they're basing it on precedent, not on the simple act of the Constitution. So no, Article 1 powers do not include the power to regulate commerce within a state. Also, Article 5, which covers among the federal government, prohibits depriving someone of their property without due process of law, a process that protects the rights of the individual. This CDC order deprives private citizens and private companies of the property that they are renting without protecting their rights. So this is not simply a question of is it interstate commerce, but that seems to be what this judge is focusing on. And he says it does not include the power to impose the challenged eviction moratorium. So if we look at this, what do we see? Well, the good news is the judge, a federal judge in the Eastern District of Texas, has said this is not right. This is unconstitutional, therefore it's void. Now, the judge's opinion, the judge's order basically binds the people who brought suit, but it also enjoins the CDC, meaning the CDC cannot enforce this eviction moratorium at all. Now, I'm sure a smart lawyer could say, well, it only impacts that person, so it could be implied. Oh, now, here's the thing. The CDC's order has not been removed. It has not been overturned. What we have is a precedent being set that a judge in this case said, no, the CDC cannot apply the order in this case. They cannot punish people for evicting tenants who have not paid the rent under any normal circumstances simply because the CDC said no. But while there's good news in that, there's also some not unexpected bad news. The fact that this is based on the Commerce Clause, which has been so mangled, so misinterpreted that, well, other justices are going to come up with other opinions simply because they do. It completely ignores the deprivation of property without due process of law. It completely eliminates the Fifth Amendment issue. It just ignores it. So there's still more that can be done here. So on the one hand, let's take the good news that a judge has found for the Constitution, but let's not leave it there. Let's be aware that there's still issues with how this opinion was formulated, and let's make sure we defend those. It is not simply an interstate commerce issue. It is, but it's not that. That's not all. It is also an issue with deprivation of property without due process. So there's good news, there's bad news, but then again, that's life. So if you've been following the case with the CDC and their eviction moratorium order, well, this is a little bit of good news, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's celebrate this. But let's not sit back on our laurels and say, hey, we're all done, that's done with. No, it's not. This idea that the federal government can deprive someone of their property without due process of law, a direct violation of the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, has not been dealt with, and it needs to be dealt with. So I hope you'll take this, share it with others, share it with friends, share it with your elected representatives at the state and federal level. Point out that, you know what, this is a partially good answer, but they missed a very important point. Now, I don't blame the judge for this. The question brought to the judge was, does Congress have the power under the Commerce Clause? And the answer was no. I would love to see something brought that says, can Congress deprive people of property without due process of law? That is the next answer. That's the next thing we should look at. So I hope you found this follow-up helpful, keep you informed of what's going on. Hey, head over to the website, constitutionstudy.com, find out more about what we're doing, find out where I'm going to be. I'm trying to set up some speaking tours. So if you're interested in having me come speak, I'm actually putting together what I call the Knowing Your Rights Tour. I will be doing it both online and in person, and it's a chance to discuss knowing our rights and how to apply our rights, what we could learn from 2020 and how we can apply it in 2021 and in the future. So if you're interested, head to the website. You'll see a post about it and you can find out more. I'm actually looking for hosts and sponsors for in-person events. And if you want to sponsor or you want to host a online event, I'll do that too. But find out more there. Also, head to constitutionscholars.com. I've been making a point of posting news articles in the different state groups to get discussions going. And I'm really kind of hoping that people will start looking what's going on in their states and discussing that as well. So head over there. And again, if you want to support the work that we're doing, go to the Scholars and buy something from the store, or support the Constitution Study by donating at the website. All those donations go directly to keeping the website going, to keeping these videos going, and keeping them coming to you on a regular basis. Most of all, though, share this information, put it on social media, send it to friends and family, get the word out, because as George Washington said, the sacred fire of liberty has been entrusted into the hands of the American people. If we want to keep that fire burning, we need to provide more fuel for that fire, and that's part of what this does. So I hope you found this useful. I hope you found it encouraging to go forward, and I hope I'll see you here next time on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to